Today we're going to talk about mountains, the highest places on Earth. Mountains actually cover a surprisingly large amount of the Earth. 25% of the land on Earth is mountains. The continent with the largest amount of mountains is Asia, where they cover 64% of the land. Most of the rivers of the world start up in the mountains, and most people on Earth depend on rivers like these for water. Mountains are formed in a similar way to what causes volcanoes and earthquakes. This is the movement of huge pieces of the Earth's surface called plates. These plates move around on the surface of the Earth and sometimes crash into each other. When two of these huge plates move towards each other, where they meet, the rock gets pushed up, lifted up into mountains. The technical name for these kind of mountains is fold mountains, because the rock folds up into mountains where the plates meet. One of the most famous examples of fold mountains are the Himalayas. These were formed about 50 to 70 million years ago, when the plate which has India on moved north, up into the rest of Asia. This collision pushed up the Himalayan mountains. A similar thing happened with the Alps in Europe. The highest mountain on Earth is Mount Everest in the Himalayas. The top, or the peak, or the summit of this mountain is 8,800 meters, or 29,000 feet, above sea level. However, although the summit of this mountain is the highest place above sea level, it's not actually the furthest place away from the center of the Earth. This is because the Earth is not perfectly round. It isn't a perfect sphere. The furthest place from the center of the Earth is actually the summit of a volcano in Ecuador, South America. Mountains get pushed up because of plates crashing into each other, but over a very long time, they can also erode away. Mountains are eroded by the wind and weather, by rivers and by glaciers. But as old mountains erode away, new ones get pushed up. Because mountains are so large and spectacular, people like to visit them. There are many things people do in mountain environments, from fun things like skiing and snowboarding, to more dangerous things like trying to climb to the top of them. This is called mountain climbing or mountaineering. Climbing some of the largest mountains in the world can be extremely dangerous, and many people die every year trying to do it. One of the main problems is simply the height of the tallest mountains, known as the altitude. As you go up, or as altitude increases, there is less pressure in the air. This means that not only does it get colder and colder, but there is also less and less oxygen. The air becomes more difficult to breathe the higher you go. Climbing up a mountain too fast can cause something called altitude sickness. You therefore have to move up the mountain very slowly in a number of different stages. One of these stages is called base camp. It is from here that you finally try and climb to the summit of the mountain. These stages, or camps, are important because you need to give your body time to acclimatize or adapt to the air up here. The air doesn't have as much oxygen in it, so it's difficult to breathe. In fact, science has shown that people who live at high altitude have different blood to people who live at sea level. Their blood is better at getting the oxygen from the air than other people. This is why it's very important that people who try and climb mountains acclimatize slowly to the altitude. This is not the only danger when climbing mountains, however. As we saw earlier, mountains are slowly being eroded by the weather. This means that rocks and ice can fall down, killing people. It's not just rock and ice though. Sometimes huge amounts of snow can suddenly start to move, something called an avalanche. This happens so quickly that people can't escape and they get covered by the large amount of snow. Every year, 120 to 150 people die in avalanches in the Alps in Europe. Another danger comes when people have to cross glaciers, which are huge rivers of ice. Often these glaciers have big holes in them, which people can fall into. These holes are especially dangerous when the top of the glacier is covered with snow and you can't see what you're walking on. People try to protect themselves against this danger by using ropes. They tie a rope to each person climbing so that if someone falls into a hole, the other people can rescue them. But in spite of these dangers, many people still try to climb the most dangerous mountains every year, for the adventure and for the challenge.